What is going on, investors? Hopefully you guys are doing well out there. And if you're like me, you are thinking to yourself right now that it is finally Friday. It's been one of those kind of weeks where we're happy it's Friday and we're happy it's time for the FAANG Stock Recap Show here on the Investor Channel, where every Friday we recap all the major news and the technical chart patterns from all the major FAANG stocks. We had, in general, a little bit of a mixed market. You have some stocks like Tesla, Nvidia rallying this week. Other stocks, like the one we kicked things off with, Meta, heading in the other direction, but more or less flat as it started the week at 568, down just fractionally to 567. Now, it was actually a pretty big week for Meta. They had an event where they showed off several new products, including a brand new prototype product that they're calling the Orion. These are what they are calling the very first true augmented reality glasses. These things actually look pretty darn cool on the face. Now, these are prototype. It looks like just Meta employees and maybe select individuals are going to get access to that. But it looks like, to me, maybe a slightly more interesting form factor than maybe the Apple Vision Pro. It does different types of things, like maybe allowing different video conferences while you're sitting there, maybe having these glasses on. You can have a FaceTime conversation or a chat. The other thing that you can do is maybe look at a list of ingredients or have ingredients on a table, and maybe it can turn you into a Michelin star chef by giving you some ideas for a recipe based on what the glasses had in front of you. Now, the presentation also gave an example, like maybe I am running out of oatmeal and I can look at the oatmeal and maybe order it directly from Amazon, or I can set a reminder and order it at a later date based on what I'm looking at through my Vision glasses. Now, that's an interesting product. We'll see if Meta can take that over the finish line probably over the next year or so. The company did announce Meta Quest 3S, which is a new, more affordable mixed reality headset, more traditional Oculus-style headset. The ones that are in the marketplace already, based on Meta's financials, aren't necessarily great sellers. There's a more or less a niche market for these. When we're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar company, as we are in with Meta, we got a $299 price point with that. Now, Meta's strategy we are in love with, okay? Their open source Llama models, can they turn into like the Android of AI software? I think there's a possibility there with Meta, and certainly that would help Meta create other devices. That is the platform, and that is the direction I think Meta is going in. They're releasing the software open source, very similar to what Google did, and their plan is to create hardware devices in partnership with companies like Ray-Ban, but also making proprietary devices like this Oculus headset, and have that be the platform going forward. Now, they released these new 3.2 lightweight language models. These actually fit on the device, or the industry term is these fit on the edge. So they're actually stored on the device. I don't necessarily have to make a call to the cloud. Some of Apple's intelligence also works the same way, or at least they're running you through servers which they claim are secure. These lightweight language models are going to become more and more popular going forward, and my guess is the capabilities will get bigger and bigger as well. Now, speaking of Apple, also like Meta, started the week basically where it ended at 227, and I mean, we ended flat on the dot. Now, the company is not sitting around and watching Meta release a bunch of new hardware products. Apple is saying that they may be releasing what they're calling the home accessory. We reported on this in the past. You've probably maybe read reports on this. And this is a device that combines several of Apple's capabilities, more likely an iPad and some of these HomePod speakers. It is a device that might sit on maybe a kitchen countertop or maybe a dining room table or something like that, and may serve as a hub to maybe control other devices as well. Something with a screen and a speaker would be interesting, but for a company Apple's size, which we're approaching $3.5 trillion, I don't know how much this will move the needle, but Apple can surprise us. Now, it is the time of year when Apple releases their newest phones, and then all of the estimations on how sales are begin to come in. Now, Apple iPhone 16 lead times, which is if you go to the website and you see how long it takes to actually get one of these phones, those are actually below the past 3 cycles. That could mean demand is weak. It also could mean that they're just better at sourcing these materials and delivering the goods at a faster pace. Webbush said the first weekend of iPhone 16 sales are seen as a, quote, bullish start for Apple. We'll see what happens when they report their earnings. But some hard data is that foreign iPhone sales, which include Apple iPhones in China, continue to slump. 12.7% year over year in the month of August. We're seeing in China, just domestically, the China-made EVs. We're seeing it from the electric vehicle space, but certainly from the phone perspective as well. The consumers in China are choosing the domestic-based one over the Apple devices, at least in some certain capacity. Now, moving on to Amazon. Moved a little bit, down from 192 at the beginning of the week, down about 2% to finish the week. We'll call that $188 per share. The company has reportedly drawn in $1.8 billion in ad spending commitments for its video streaming services. I would imagine a good chunk of this $1.8 billion has to do with the fact that they air a football game exclusively on Thursday night, and this is why Amazon paid the big bucks, and I think it's actually over $1 billion just for access to an exclusive Thursday night game. Because what happens is an advertiser, maybe like Sony, wants to advertise the PlayStation on the Thursday night game. Well, what Amazon does is they probably package, first of all, it gives them a relationship with Sony from an ad perspective, and then it allows them to sell those ads and maybe feed those ads in a package with Sony to other programs on side of Prime Video. Certainly will be interesting, because we know that Google's YouTube, I think, is running at maybe a $7, $8, $9 billion. I'm running these figures off the top of my head, but that is on a quarterly run rate there. So if Amazon, not saying it could compare to YouTube in terms of ads, but $1.8 billion seems like that could get a lot bigger. Now, the company's Anthropic investment is going to generate about $1 billion in revenue this year. It looks like they're going to try to raise money at a 40 times sales valuation, as I'm sure that $1 billion is a lot more than they made the previous year, looking to raise money at that massive $40 billion valuation. Now, the partnership with Amazon and Anthropic does not, you rarely see this here on the Investor Channel. Usually the investigation is happening and it's about to come down. In this case, a UK regulator say they're not going to announce that deal. But as we know, after the fact, the regulators could come back and question it. Now, moving on to Netflix, start of the week at 703, also really flat. A lot of flat stock prices this week, as Netflix from this week at 707. Disney Plus is rolling out those paid sharing password crackdowns in most markets. As they all know, you have your password and then you share it with your brother and your sister and your aunt and your mom. And they're cracking down on that because they figured out Netflix made a lot of money after they did that. Moving on to Nvidia, and a stock that actually moved this week. Started the week at 115. It was up actually pretty noticeably. Looked like we peaked out over $126 per share, but we settled with Nvidia up about 4.75% at 121 and some change. Now, Jensen Huang's got a big old smile on his face as the Blackwell release date nears, likely towards the back half of the year. You are going to have shipments, and it looks like maybe the first quarter of next year, you are going to basically January, February, March, April quarter, you are going to have volume shipments. I have not seen any research, particularly from the research that called the Blackwell delay in advance. I've not seen any negative information on Blackwell. It looks like to me it's on track, and I think that is why Nvidia shares continue to track higher. And it's in the spotlight as also the existing Hopper designs continue to have strong pricing according to research. That is ahead of Blackwell, which we know the pricing on that is probably even stronger. Now, we got a huge week from memory. SK Hynix, which is I believe, the undisputed leader in terms of high bandwidth memory, which surrounds the NVIDIA GPUs, both on the Hopper and the Blackwell. They have mass manufacturing underway. We also got news and earnings from Micron. We'll be going over Micron's earnings on our semiconductor show. Links down in the description to Equity Empire, our other channel. Make sure you subscribe there. Tune in this weekend. We'll talk about Micron. We'll talk about memory. We'll talk about NVIDIA. Intel, there was a ton of news and acquisition-related stuff with Intel. We'll go over that, and we go over the technicals as well on that show. Make sure you subscribe to the channel very, very soon so you don't miss that. So Micron gave us not only strong earnings, but guidance as well. And if you read through the details on Micron's conference call, they've barely scaled up to just a few $100 million in HBM. So this is a company that is going to scale up big time next year, and it's certainly bullish for Nvidia, particularly Blackwell, which requires more and more of this HBM memory. If SK Hynix is scaling up, if Micron is scaling up, that means Nvidia is hearing from their customers that demand is going to be very, very strong. Probably comes as no surprise to any of you. Now, moving on to Google. Start of the week at 164, and the trend of the week was flat. Finished the week at, we'll call that 164. But YouTube is reporting a revamp of its TV app, which I've got to admit, I've used YouTube on the TV. My kids watch it sometimes too. And I think it does need a revamp. And so it's interesting. They're going to have these cinematic trailers. Maybe we're going to have to create some really fancy trailer for our channel. You know, I probably won't do that. We'll just keep things as basic as possible, because the most important thing is we have fun and you make some money. But we're going to have immersive previews, easier ways to subscribe, which I think could happen on the TV. That is exciting, and it's obviously an exciting product for Google. Now, the company's emails are presented as key evidence in the antitrust trial, as you'd expect. Internally, Google was saying, we're going to crush you. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. It'd be like just going like in a football locker room before a game, and the coach is saying, we're going to crush this. We're going to crush that. And then it used against them in court. This is exactly what you want to see from Google. But also, if you are an attorney and you are on the United States government side, you would take those emails and use them in the court of law. Now, interesting news for Google. There is this race, obviously, largely between OpenAI, Google Gemini, but also the large language models open source from Meta to become the Android, if you will, of the large language models. Snapchat is choosing Google's Gemini to become the backbone for the chatbot used on Snapchat. I think this is going to be a broad enough market that there won't be like one singular winner, but I think we're looking at the trinity that will dominate, and I think it's going to be Meta, it's going to be Google, and I think no doubtably, obviously, OpenAI as well, although a lot of news from OpenAI when we get to Microsoft. Now, Smartsheet, which is a company, ticker symbol SMAR. I've only looked at it in passing. You've got a $7 billion market cap on this one, but they agreed to an $8.4 billion sale to a private equity firm. The rumors are, though, potentially other companies like Amazon, Google, Zoom Video, Oracle could step in with a bid, although regulatory perspective, they might just let this one go to PE. Now, moving over to Microsoft, start of the week at 432, down about 1% to finish the week at 428. Research is showing that AI platforms could be a threat to Reddit and other question and answer platforms, maybe like Quora or Stack Overflow, those types of websites. Here's what I think, though, and this was said about these sites when social media came out. And I tell you what, Reddit seems like maybe it's not as popular as it used to be, but they're certainly doing fine from a traffic perspective. But here's what's going to happen, I think, is these Q&A platforms in Reddit, they're actually super valuable from a data perspective, obviously getting fed into these large language models. I think what's going to have to happen is you're going to need more incentive to post. So users are actually going to have to be incentive. Doesn't necessarily have to be monetary. Could be as simple as things like badges and rankings and different types of, some people might do it just for that because there's millions of people that do it for free. But at some point, very similar to YouTube, one of the reasons why I post these videos on YouTube is, number one, it has the largest reach. And number two, Google pays me not a lot. Believe me, I can't afford my lifestyle based on YouTube views, but it does pay me a little bit of money. Now, OpenAI is to remove a non-profit control and give sneaky, slimy Sam Altman an equity stake. Now, OpenAI is considering granting Sam Altman a 7% stake. And I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve this, but if you see the mass exodus around Sam Altman and OpenAI, everybody is ditching this guy, including their new chief or their existing chief technology officer, Murati, who took a lot of spotlight as Sam Altman was battling with the board several months ago, or maybe even close to a year ago, when he was fired over the weekend and then rehired. Sam Altman, who I don't trust at all. Anything that comes out of this guy's mouth, I don't trust. Now, is he brilliant? Is he doing a good job at OpenAI? I think we probably can say that, but he has these Mark Zuckerberg kind of slimy, early Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg certainly has matured quite a bit, but Sam Altman has these kind of sneaky, slimy Silicon Valley type of vibes. He's saying that the executive departures are not related to the restructuring, but it's just so coincidental that the company announces that they're ditching this nonprofit thing, which is really surprising. I would love to start a nonprofit and then have it start to take off, and then all of a sudden I turn it into a for-profit company. How is that legal? I'm not exactly sure, but Sam Altman is the kind of guy that would be able to pull that off. Now, Microsoft struck a deal, though, with Constellation Energy. This was interesting. Talked about this on the newsletter as well. I'm just on full promotion mode, like links down below in the newsletter as well. None of this cost any money, at least at the current time, so you might as well sign up. But Constellation Energy had this shuttered nuclear plant outside of Pennsylvania, I believe. Microsoft is going to invest over $1 billion to get that thing back up and running, but here's the key is you still need permits and you need to kind of rebuild. My understanding is one of the silos, it can still be operational. So you need a lot of work and you need the permits. Now, in Pennsylvania, probably a lot easier than out here. If this was in California, I'd say forget it. They're going to get these permits and we'll all be like 80 years old by the time they get it. Pennsylvania might be a little bit different, and certainly with Microsoft and Constellation Energy behind it, might happen a little faster than normal. Moving on to Tesla, start of the week at 246, and the big winner is Tesla, as it is up 5.6%. Year to date, though, with Tesla, you're up 5%. You finally swung positive this week, it looks like. And over the past year, you're up 7%, as Goldman Sachs says you should be buying Tesla. And I'm stressing here, this is Goldman Sachs telling you what to do, not me. Buy Tesla call options ahead of the 2 October Catalyst events. This is what you should have done a month ago. Okay, so the fact that Goldman is coming out and saying this now, that means that they're trying to sell. And so whenever Goldman tells you to do something, it means they did it 30, 60, 90 days ago, and now their clients are trying to unwind the position, and they're trying to get the general public to come in there and buy the other end of the trade. Because again, if you look at Tesla's performance over the last 9 months, up 24%, or excuse me, over the last month is up 24%, and even over the past 6 months is over 46%. You should have bought call options several months ago. Doing it just weeks before the event, that is what an average retail investor would do. Now, Tesla gains ahead of its riveting. They're calling this a riveting slate of October events. We obviously have that 10/10 event, which is that robo-taxi event we'll talk about in a minute. We'll also get October Q3 deliveries, likely just in a couple of days. And many analysts believe that those Q3 deliveries, which the expectations have been lowered, may be able to match expectations. And if Tesla is able to continue to see interest rates lower, certainly will help them, probably other automobile makers as well. We'll switch back to a daily view, and we've got our technical segment, and we have confirmed exactly what we were looking for here. A new higher high on the S&P 500. This is absolutely beautiful. New higher high. You are at the highs. This is where you can take some profits if you feel like it. And if you don't feel like it, well, you've got some time and wait for a pullback, and you continue to buy these pullbacks because that trend is intact. Look at Meta. Oh my goodness, we are looking beautiful with Meta. We had resistance at 539. We popped over that. We confirmed a new higher high with Meta. That is absolutely beautiful. We are moving into an earnings month, so October could be relatively volatile as we set up into earnings, but right now we're setting up towards the top end, but we've got a long ways to go. About a month from now, we'll hear from Meta and most of these companies. Apple did not able to confirm a new higher high, but not a big deal. Still looks good from a trend perspective. This red line is what I consider kind of the top of the trend line, and changed it to a purple line as I called it red. You would like to see a new higher high, which would take you up into the 230s, 240s on Apple. We'll see if that materializes again, like most of these companies. They'll report the third week of October outside of Netflix and Tesla usually. Now, Amazon still looking really strong. We've sucked our way back into this channel. Would like to see with Amazon at the very least get back to the middle of the channel. Back to the middle of the channel at this point would actually confirm a new higher high pushing all the way back to the top of the channel would be a massive move. I think that kind of move probably not happening unless they give very, very solid earnings. Netflix has just been one of the more durable stocks out of all of this, just in this beautiful uptrend. In fact, you were in an uptrend and then you kind of channeled up to a new one. I mean, this is absolutely beautiful. You're setting up at the top. Now, Netflix is usually one of the first companies to report. We'll hear from them just a couple of weeks from now on Thursday, the 17th of October. Nvidia did not confirm a new higher high this week, but that doesn't mean that it's all is lost. You are consolidating around these levels. You would like to see Nvidia perk up into this 140 range for sure, but for now, not only is that channel holding, but you have this longer I've took the longer term trend off with Nvidia because that is clearly intact, but we are in this pattern as well. You can obviously always dissect these channels in half more or less, and we are working our way back to the middle of the channel. If Nvidia keeps humming along, well, so will the rest of the markets. Google's also looking very, very nice. Kind of busted out of our original channel, back tested into it. Now here we are. If you believe that this will look a little bit like Netflix, Netflix did a similar type of thing. So we had this original uptrend channel, then we busted out of it, kind of did a back test into it or on top of it, and now we're channeling up. I think the similar type of thing could happen with Google. Whereas this old channel surrounded by these black lines, that could be the old one, and now we're in a new one where the black line is our bottom and then maybe this green line is our top, and we kind of channel up here. We'll see with Google. Obviously, earnings and fundamentals have a lot to do with that. Microsoft's still looking really good. We're consolidating our trend lines here, but obviously the long run is intact and this shorter term trend is intact as well. We're working our way back to the middle of the channel. Microsoft looks absolutely beautiful, and Tesla, oh my goodness, this one looks absolutely sensational, but this one is on a breakneck pace. And so needless to say with Tesla, you have these big channels up and you have these big moves up, and it's typically followed by a big move down. Now, we are not meeting any type of meaningful resistance until you get to about where you're at with Tesla, probably 270 up into the 300s. You've got that event on 1010. You have delivery numbers coming next week. You have earnings on October 16th. So a ton of news flow and a ton of information and earnings coming for Tesla. If you push into the 300s on this one, that is your time to take some shorter term profits with Tesla. Again, unless you want to stomach these like 100-point swings that the stock often goes on. Bull case scenario is you get up into the 300s. If you get up into the 300s, I think you could retest all-time highs up here at 400. Tesla's looking really, really good technically. But again, these short-term technicals with Tesla can run into resistance, and you're going to get hard resistance up here at 295 on this one. My guess with Tesla from a techno perspective, you're going to set up at 295, and it's going to be a very high-stakes game on that 1010 event. And if they only marginally deliver, you could have a very, very large knee-jerk reaction down. If they have products that look like they're about to get launched within the next couple of months, well, then you could really actually move into the $400 price range pretty quick with Tesla. Folks, that was the FAANG Stock Recap Show for Friday, September 27th. Please, if you could do me a favor and like the video. Also, subscribe to our other channel. Subscribe to the newsletter. All of that is free. Hitting the like button is free. Hitting the subscribe button is free. It's not going to be like my last newsletter, which was a terrible company that spammed your email. I will not do that. We'll treat you with respect. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Enjoy your weekend. Be safe. We'll see you again next week. Good luck with your investments.